All right, so today we're going to look at piecewise functions, and I'm going to talk like a minute about like mathematical textbook kind of piecewise functions. Most of what this lesson is going to be is a nice real world application of a piecewise function when you're trying to determine a health insurance plan that you want to choose. All right, so let's get started. All right, so here's my one slide on textbook kind of piecewise functions. So probably have seen this kind of stuff before, but invariably people question kind of how to graph piecewise functions. The evaluating of them right here is not too tough. Here's the thing. Let's start with that, and then we'll look at the graph. Maybe I'll do that the other way around. Sorry. Okay, let's look at the graph. Let's come over here. A piecewise function is a function where you're using pieces of multiple functions. But because it's a function, it still has to pass a vertical line test. So when you combine all these pieces together, they can never overlap to where your vertical line test would not pass. So in this example here, you can see that I have two pieces. I have a quadratic, and this is really the same as this over here. This is a quadratic. So this is a parabola. You can see that it has just a parent parabola that's gone up one. So here's the graph of it. It's like this. But you are only going to graph this parabola when x is less than 0. So you're really only graphing this portion over here. And then you have a linear graph. Okay, so this is just a parent linear graph that's gone down 1. So it's got a slope of 1. Y-intercept is -1, and here it is. And we're going to graph it everywhere that x is greater than or equal to 0. So now you're only moving towards the right. This is a closed dot. This is an open dot because of the or equal to or not. Okay, so when you're graphing these, sometimes you'll get lucky and one function will actually merge into the other function. If this line, let's say that was a +1, then this linear graph would have like started here and gone up, which would have made this open dot get closed in by this closed dot, and it would be this nice continuous function if that were the case. Both scenarios can happen. Okay, so now that's how it gets graphed. Typically what I do if I did have to graph it is I would graph the full parabola and then I erase off the part that I don't really need. Sometimes it's easier to do that. Let's look at evaluating. So when you're evaluating it, so you're looking at f of x, and they want to know when x is, what the function equals when x is -1, 0, and 1. And probably how you're going to see that written is something like this. They're going to say, hey, what's f of -1? It's going to look like that. So what that means is you're going to plug -1 in for x. You do not plug -1 in for both of these. You plug it in for the one that's appropriate for x being a -1. Does that fall into this category or into this category? Well, -1 is less than 0, so you're going to be using this function only. You don't use this one at all. So you plug in your -1, -1 squared is 1 plus 1, that's a 2. So when you're evaluating, you get 2. You can see that actually over here on our graph, when x is -1, the y value is, boom, right there. The y value would be a 2. All right, let's try the other one, f of 0. Okay, this is actually the key point where the graph is going to switch from one function to the next. So which one of these functions do we use? Well, we use the one that has the or equal to on it. So if you were to plug 0 in here, 0 minus 1, that's -1. And then the last one they want us to do is f of 1. And 1 is greater than or equal to 0. So again, we're looking at the second function, and 1 minus 1 is 0. Okay, so that's kind of textbook piecewise functions. Let's jump into this big insurance problem we're doing. Now, what our goal here is today is, and this is, I get it that you don't pay for your health insurance probably, so you maybe don't have a lot of knowledge about health insurance. You might pay your own car insurance, and maybe you've been in a wreck and you've had to deal with some of that insurance, using that insurance. It's kind of similar, but there are some differences to it. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how insurance, whether it's, just some terminology, whether it's car insurance or health insurance, and then kind of I'm going to pose a problem to you that you have to work on. So typically what happens is in your real job as an adult, your company very likely will offer you a health insurance plan, and they offer different versions of a plan. Like you get to pick. Do you want the one that's really, really good but costs a lot, or you want you're not very sick very much, so you don't need a lot of health insurance? You have options. So what your goal here today is for us to determine a function for the overall cost for you as the employee. What's the overall cost? We're going to call that C, with respect to the annual incurred medical expenses. So how much how much do you have in medical expenses? And health insurance lasts for a year, and then you re-up it and you get it again. But so that those medical expenses we're going to call M. So that's going to be like our X. The C is going to be like our Y. Then we're going to have 3 different options of health insurance to choose from. So you're going to compare these 3 functions graphically. They're going to be a piecewise function, and you're going to display it, and we're going to use Desmos to display it nicely so that you can share it with the employees and help them in making their best choice. Because the best choice varies depending on who they are and what their expenses will be. So let's talk some common vocabulary in the world of insurance. So employees pay a premium. Okay, now you should be taking, I have a lot of stuff written here for you to come back to, but if there's anything that you feel like you need to add to, this is what you're doing in your notes, add some little quick notes to yourself kind of stuff on this. So the employee pays a premium. Now that's just a fancy word for that's your monthly payment. That's what the fee is to have the insurance. And that's with health insurance or car insurance. You pay a premium. And then the employer sometimes will subsidize this. Subsidize means they help offset the cost. They pay a little bit of it for you. So as you're, choosing a job with a certain company versus another company, this is sort of part of the benefit package they would give you, and see how much do they help you, how much do they subsidize your health insurance. All right, so typically the higher the premium, so the higher the monthly fee, then the better the insurance coverage, meaning that if something were to happen, the insurance company is going to pay better, and then you don't have to pay as much out of your pocket. All right. But then, of course, you're paying more at that premium stage. So the premium will vary depending on how many people are covered by that insurance. So typically, you will get the option to just get insurance for yourself. Maybe it's insurance for you and your spouse. Maybe it's insurance for just you and your kids, or maybe it's the entire family. So these are 4 different options. Now, our challenge here today is that there's only so much that we can incorporate in our piecewise function here. So we are going to focus just on this scenario here today, if it was just the employee. But we could go through and we could do all of the scenarios, but we're going to focus on this situation. All right, so both with car insurance and health insurance, there's typically what we call a deductible. This is the amount that you have to pay before the insurance even starts to kick in. So there's an amount that you have to pay, and for health insurance, that deductible goes for a whole year. And so maybe the deductible is $1,000. So what they're saying is that you have to pay $1,000 before the health insurance is going to kick in. There's usually a deductible for each individual. So I have $1,000 deductible. My husband has $1,000, so they don't overlap, except that there is kind of a grand total for the family, and so that's usually some sort of a deal. So if I had the whole family, and let's say I had 3 kids and my husband and me, and we all had $1,000 deductible, there might be a better option. Like maybe it's only a $2,000 for the whole family. It's not that everybody has to hit that 1,000. But again, we're going to focus on just the individual employee only, so we won't worry too much about that. So now, again, there's so many special situations that may be exempt from that deductible. Maybe it's some sort of preventative care, or maybe there's doctor visits, or maybe it's a prescriptions. Different insurances do things differently. So we're going to kind of have to talk generically today. I can't dig into every special situation that might happen. So now, after your deductible is reached, so let's say I reached my $1,000, I had some stuff going on this year, reached the $1,000. Now the insurance is going to start helping me pay. And notice I say helping me pay, because typically they don't suddenly pay everything. Typically they'll pay a certain percent, and this is health insurance. Oftentimes with car insurance, once you pay that deductible, now they pay the rest. But in health insurance, what they'll do is they'll start paying, but they'll pay a certain percent. And then the employee pays the other percent. So the amount that the employee has to pay is called the co-payment, or the co-insurance. Now, there's typically an annual maximum out of pocket. So they call that MOOP, M-O-O-P, maximum out of pocket for the year. So if something catastrophic happens, there is a point at which you do not have to pay anymore. It's not that you continue to pay your percent. You've hit your maximum out of pocket. The insurance will cover everything from there on. And again, this is something that is accumulating throughout 1 year for all the medical events that occur to you. And then again, it starts all over at the end of that year. Okay, let's keep going. So let's run through a scenario so that this kind of makes sense before we jump in. It says, here is what I say a simplified example for an individual. So Michael has insurance with a premium of $300 a month. He has a deductible of $1,000, and his co-insurance is 20%. So remember, that means that once he hit his deductible of $1,000, now the insurance is going to start helping. They're going to pay 80%, and Michael's going to pay 20% of any of his medical expenses. He does have a maximum out of pocket of $5,000. All right, so let's look at Michael's year. So Michael goes to the doctor for a knee injury. All right, so his doctor charges $100 for an office visit, and he's going to pay that full amount because he hasn't reached his deductible. All right, now the doc says, ooh, this looks pretty bad. You've got to go to a specialist. So the specialist has a $400 office visit fee. So he's still paying that because he still has not reached his deductible. Now the specialist says you got to have surgery. Okay, his surgery is going to cost $20,000. He is going to pay $500 because at that point right there, boom, he hit his deductible. So he's going to pay $500 of the $20,000. So he still has this $19,500 left on that bill for the surgery. And of that, he's going to pay 20% while the insurance will pay 80%. So his 20% of $19,500 is $3,900. I've already done the math on all this. Okay. So now next month, Michael has to go to the doctor for strep throat. That's $100. Remember, the doctor charged $100, except he's already reached his deductible, so he only has to pay his 20% copay. That's $20. If he's healthy for the rest of the year, he would have paid, don't forget the premium he had to pay, right? He was paying $300 every month. So he paid $3,600 in premiums. He paid the $1,000 in deductible, and then his copays after that deductible were $3,920 for a grand total of $8,520 for his medical expenses total. Now notice that he didn't quite reach his $5,000 out of pocket because the premiums do not count in that. This stuff right here would count as his max out of pocket, which is, let's see what that is. That was $49.20. So really close to the $5,000. If he would have had any more medical expenses, he would have been okay the rest of the year because he'd almost reached that max out of pocket. Okay, so that was the scenario that we've got to think through all those things. So let's begin by comparing the coverages so we can identify any differences. Again, not accounting for every little type of variation, that some things are exempt, some things are not. We're just going to kind of try to think of it kind of a little bit more black and white and not gray areas in there. So here's what we want to focus on. We're going to have to pay attention to what the premium is. We're going to pay attention to what our deductible is, and then what the co-payment is, and then the max out of pocket. So we're going to write our functions, put them into Desmos and graph them so that we feel like that's a nice visual to show the employees to help them. Now, I pulled this. This is the school district's health plan that they offer the employees at USD 266. Now, I don't know when you're watching this. This happens to be the 24-25 plan option. So there's plan A, plan B, and plan C to choose from. In plan A, okay, so here's the deductibles. Again, remember, we're only going to be using the individual. We're not going to look at the family situation. So the other thing that matters is if you are going to a doctor that is considered in the network versus out of the network. So doctors and hospitals and stuff, they sort of make deals with insurance companies, and for them to be in their network, then the insurance company says, all right, well, you have to accept this particular amount of money. If you're going to do a knee surgery, you have to accept $20,000 as what you will charge for that. You can't suddenly make it more expensive if you're going to be in our network. And so this might be like Blue Cross Blue Shield to be a very common insurance company, and it's a very common one to be considered in network. So we're going to ignore the out of network situations. We're doing only the in network situation. So we're going to do some highlighting here. If you have a highlighter, that'd be great. So what I'm paying attention to here is for my option A. Option A has a $500 deductible right here. $500 deductible. Actually, let's do it right here. Let's circle that. Wait, that's not a very big. My highlighter's not working. I don't know. Oh, now I've got it. There it is. Okay, highlight that right there. Okay, so $500 deductible. Option B has a $3,000 deductible. And option C is a $6,000 deductible. Now, we also want to, I should have circled this right here the way I did the others. We also want to pay attention to the coinsurance. So this $500 seems like, wow, that's a good deductible. That they're going to kick in right away versus this $3,000. But notice what your copay is after that. After you hit that deductible, you're going to be paying 50-50 with the insurance company. But if you go with the $3,000 deductible, now this is the way that they write this. This is what the insurance company is showing you. They're showing you what their copay is. So maybe this is worth making a note. The 80% is theirs. So that means you're a 20%. And this option C is what they call a high deductible health plan. And it really does not have great coverage, but what do you suppose that means? If the coverage isn't great, it means your premiums are going to be pretty cheap. So this isn't terrible insurance if you're the type of person that's not going to be going to the doctor very much. If you're young and healthy, this isn't a bad idea to go with a high deductible, because notice that once you hit your 6,000, they're paying 100% after that. Okay. The other thing, the out-of-pocket max is for the individual for all three plans is $7,000. So now the next thing we have to look at is, well, what are the premiums going to be? And so here is, now they kind of switched the direction of this. I don't love that they did this, but here's option A, option B, and option C. So now I'm going vertical. But remember that of these 4 different possibilities, we are only looking at the employee only scenario. So in all 3 of these plans, I'm looking at that top line only. So now let's go ahead and do some highlighting of this chart. So this is part of being able to read a chart and understand what on earth is all this, what are all these numbers? Okay, let's figure it out. For the employee only, your total premium is $605.44. That is a month. And it's worth noting, look at these. If you had family insurance, it's $1,900 a month. Go thank your parents for paying your health insurance for you, because it is expensive. So that's why I say that when you get that, you're choosing a job and you have a couple offers, you look at what the benefit package is, because this makes a difference. Just because one company has a higher salary, you want to look and see, well, are they helping you at all with the insurance? Because here is what they're showing. This is what the district will pay for the employees of USD 266. Of this total premium, they are going to pay this amount. You can see that they start to pay a little bit more as your coverage gets more expensive, but not an equal amount, you can see. But I'm not here to discuss whether it's good or bad with it. I'm just saying, hey, this is what we have. So if they are going to pay $430 of the 605, that means I have to pay this number. And that's just the difference of those two. So looking at this big chart, the number I care about is this one right here. This is what I'm going to be paying monthly for option A. For option B, I'm going to be paying this. And for option C, remember that C was not very good coverage, but it's only costing $36 a month. So maybe that's not such a bad deal, again, if you're healthy. Of course, we all know you can't really plan. Nobody plans to get sick. Nobody plans to end up getting a disease or getting in a car accident or having surgeries or anything. Nobody plans for that. So insurance is that thing where it's, protecting you for the just in case kind of scenario. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to work through, let's say we went with plan A, and I'm going to help you write the piecewise function for plan A. And then your homework is going to be to do plan B and plan C. All right, so there's different scenarios for what your medical expenses for the year are going to be. You have the situation where you're very, very healthy and nothing really happens and you never meet your deductible. You have another scenario where, all right, you had a few things happen like Michael did, and you did reach your deductible, but it wasn't crazy bad. The third situation is you had a catastrophic, that's actually a word they use in insurance, a catastrophic, I don't even know if I can spell that, catastrophic? There it is. Okay, catastrophic. I think that's an A. Catastrophic. Like you had a lot going on. You hit your deductible. You hit your max out of pocket. These are the 3 pieces or the 3 functions you have to write, and they're not going to overlap. So let's start with you never even reach your deductible. Okay, so remember, this is a cost function with respect to what medical expenses you incur. All right, so first of all, okay, this is going to be kind of a pain because it's like back and forth, back and forth. Hopefully, well, maybe, well, you have your notes. You can peek back. I'm going to have to jot some things down. Give me a second. All right, I had to go back and look at the premiums and stuff. Okay, to get my numbers straight. So the first thing, no matter what, good year, bad year, health-wise, you have to pay the premium. So for Plan A, your premium was $175.44. But remember that you had to pay that every month. So that's times 12. All right, so that's the first thing. Got to pay the premium. Now, this is an easy year health-wise, didn't have much going on. You just paid things as they came in. So I just paid my medical expenses. M is your variable. It's the medical expenses that you incurred. I just paid them as they came. Okay, now remember it's a piecewise function because I am only going to use this function on the scenario where I didn't reach my deductible. So then what that means is that M would have to be less than, well, actually, let me back that up. First of all, it's actually going to be a compound inequality is what I'm going to show here because it doesn't make sense for M to be negative. So we would say M is going to be greater than or equal to 0, but it's going to have to stay below what my deductible was because I didn't have enough to spend on that. So that, remember, was $500. And I'm going to pay right up to $500. Okay, so that's the piece of this function I'm going to use. Now let's go to the next scenario. The next scenario would be, I did have some stuff happen, but you know what? No matter what, I'm paying the premium. So I'm going to start with that. I've got to pay the 175.44 12 times. Plus, okay, so think about this. I did end up reaching my deductible. So that means, remember that the deductible was $500. So somewhere along the way, I paid $500 out of pocket, right? Plus, now I started paying my medical expenses. But I'm sorry, the insurance started helping me pay the medical expenses. But remember what their percent was on Plan A, it was a 50-50. They're going to pay 50%. I'm going to pay 50%. So that means that in addition to that $500, now I'm going to start paying 50% of my medical expenses. Now, hang on a second. It's not really all of my medical expenses because let's say that I had, I don't know, just $1,000 in medical expenses. Let's keep the numbers easy. If I had $1,000 in medical expenses, I'm not paying 50% of the 1,000 because I've already paid 500 out of pocket. I've only got 500 left of the 1,000. So I'm not really paying 50% on all 1,000, just the leftover after the deductible was met. So I subtract out the deductible here, and then I'm going to pay 50% of everything else. So whatever my medical expenses, subtract out what I've already paid, and now I'm paying 50% of that. Okay, so now these get to be very long functions horizontally. Sorry, I should have warned you to write little here. Okay, so now we have to figure out when is it, what would be the M value, the inequality that this scenario would play out. Well, it would be when your medical expenses end up being greater than the 500, but less than, what do you think? I feel like it's very tempting to want to put 7,000 here. Very tempting to do that because you're thinking, all right, my medical expenses, this is reached the deductible greater than 500, but it's going to stay less than my catastrophic situation. But here's what's wrong with this is that your medical expenses here, this is what you were billed. This is not what you actually paid. This is what you were billed. What you paid is this right here. And that's what they're talking about out of pocket. This is out of your pocket right here. So you have a little bit of side work to do here. So I am going to take away that 7,000. I think I'm going to. I'm trying to undo that. There we go. Okay. We have a little side note of a little equation we have to set up. You have to figure out what would M equal so that your out of pocket, your 500 plus the 0.50 M minus 500 equals $7,000. What would you have to be billed in order for you to have paid the 7,000? Okay, so we have to do this to figure out what to put in this last spot here. So subtract your, you can distribute or not distribute. I don't care. I'm not going to subtract that 500. Then you're going to divide by 0.5. Dividing by 1/2 is the same as multiplying by 2. So that's going to end up being 13,000. Add the 500. So I would have to be billed 13,500 for me to have actually paid out of pocket 7,000. And this is going to be the number that goes there. Okay, now we got our last scenario, our catastrophic scenario. So this is going to be your cost with respect to your medical expenses, still going to have the premium that you're paying. All right, so let's think about what you incurred here. You did reach your $500, but this is the scenario where you reached the max out of pocket. So ultimately, what you have done is you've hit the scenario right here where your total out of pocket was 7,000. I don't really need to do all of this stuff. This catastrophic scenario is that I paid my premium and I paid $7,000 out of pocket. So I'm going to put $7,000. When are you going to use this? You're going to use this whenever M got to be greater than that 13,500 number. Okay. Now, that's pretty much it. There's one thing I want to draw your attention to. Maybe you're already questioning it. The whole thing about this 7,000, and if you look at the plan, it talks about that this is only until you hit 6,000. There's like this $1,000 that's in here that is confusing, and it confused me when I first did this. I thought, where's the $1,000? Where's the difference between the 6,000 on the that's written on the plan versus the 7,000 maximum out of pocket? And I actually called the insurance company. They actually thought, let me think on that. They didn't even know right off. The gal I talked to didn't know right off, but she looked into it and got back to me. And really what it is it's all those special situations that I said that we're not going to get into. It might be something with the prescriptions and different things that you're paying and that might get included as a special scenario. So I decided from there that, okay, well, we're not including special situations, so we're just going to go with the 7,000 here that is listed as the maximum out of pocket. Okay, so now I have one more thing. We've got all of these written. What we want to do now is we want to graph this in Desmos. And for whatever reason, the format in Desmos is backwards of how we write a piecewise function. So when you go into your Desmos, you're going to do a C equals, and then you have to use a brace to indicate this is going to be a piecewise function. And you actually put the interval first. So you're going to do, like on that first one, you're going to say 0 is less than. And Desmos is really cool that you can hit that less than that's down, like shift of the comma key, less than, and then you just do an equal sign right after it, and it pops it into a less than or equal to. Less than or equal to 500 for that first one. And then you do a colon, and then you'll write your equation out. So I don't remember. Oh, yes, I do. I have it written down. So then you write your 175.44 times, which you can use the asterisk for your times, I don't know where that little line came from. That's not a negative. Times 12, and then plus your 500 that you, nope, sorry, not plus the 500, plus the M, plus your medical expenses. And then you close your brace. That's how you're going to enter it in Desmos. And then, so you're going to put that like in your first equation, then you're going to do this second equation, and then you're going to do a third equation. Over here on the left, you can long press or hover and change the color of those, because you want all three of these to be the same color. I had it listed there. I want them all to be green. And so, because you want this to all connect and not be different colors, because then we're going to do plan B and it's going to be all a different color. It's all, and then like it's all blue. And then plan C will be a different color. Okay, so go ahead, maybe try to type this in, because what I'm going to want is when you come in tomorrow, I want your plan A, plan B, plan C all done. And then I also want them all graphed in Desmos so we can then compare the different plans tomorrow. All right, that's all I've got. So good luck. You've got this.